What is up, everyone? Welcome to a brand new series called FPL Forecast. And I'm joined with a very special guest, Mira, FPL Miss 8 on Twitter. How are you doing?
Yeah, doing really well. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, the idea, or I pitched this idea for you. Basically, it
Yeah.
is a series that I wanted to do and probably get like different people as well. And like the idea is basically look at a set of fixture swings that's about to happen,
Yeah.
um, and talk about certain teams that have positive fixture swings happening and try and see which players we can get from those teams.
Mm.
And it's to try and stay ahead of the template as well. So, like last season, if anyone went on the Mitoma bandwagon slightly earlier before he ended up becoming a bandwagon, you kind of benefit from it as well. So that's the concept, and we might not always get everything right. It's obviously a prediction, which is why I forecast. So it's just to see how things go, see whether we can look at the data that we already have and expect performances to continue with a good set of fixtures coming up. So
Yeah, definitely.
so looking at all
No,
of that, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think it's a really good concept because obviously we're all sort of, thinking about one game week ahead, two games a week, game weeks ahead. And now we're getting to that sort of time period where we're thinking about things like wildcard, and a lot of people have been pulling the trigger on the wildcard earlier as well. And the template is looking pretty strong. I think like just the last couple of game weeks, everyone's thinking about similar players. So yeah, this is a really good concept. So hopefully it'll be great week after week.
Yeah, so hopefully we'll see how this goes. I don't know if I'll do this every week. It might depend
Yeah,
on because fixture swings tend to go in like a bulk.
that's right. Yeah,
So
like five game weeks, 10
yeah,
game weeks, that kind of thing. Yeah.
so we might like I'll try and get it whenever we turn into a fixture swing for a set of teams. So this week it seems like a perfect week to try and bring in because game week 4 to around 8 we got some teams having some good fixtures, but I decided to push it all the way to 10 as well because
Yeah.
the likes will move into the likes of Villa and also Liverpool, Spurs. They do have a longer fixture run as well. So
Yeah.
what I've got is before I actually go to this table, let me bring this up. I've got this here. So just to explain why the reasoning behind these specific teams. So what I've got is from Plan FPL, the predictor. But now, if you were to go even onto Fantasy Football Scout members area, and if you were to sort these teams by game week 4 to 10 by season ticker, Luton come on top, and then these remaining 5 teams at the bottom in order. Now, obviously, Luton, I don't think, even though they're at the top, I probably wouldn't want to advise anyone going towards Luton. So I went with the remaining 5. Now, you could extend this, like I just mentioned, to like even a game week 12, and you continue to see if Villa fixtures are still pretty good. Liverpool
that's really
continues
good.
even more by 2 more. Newcastle have a tough run 11, but 12 is easy. And then Spurs, obviously, decent run of fixtures as well. It's only Chelsea out of these 5 teams that maybe after game week 8, you kind of consider hopping off. So that's why I was like, okay, game week 4 to 10, decent set of fixtures to choose from.
Yeah, I agree.
Thoughts?
No, I really like that. Yeah, because that's the thing. Like just before we jumped on here, we were saying how there are a couple of teams that obviously do still look good, like Man City, for example. But I think given like the fixture swing and just the different sort of teams that we should be sort of anticipating and looking at, I think that's the best way to sort of go about it, because I think we know about the usual suspects already, right? So I mean, people are still talking about Foden, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that, and Alvarez, nothing wrong with that. But I think we're missing a whole bunch of other teams and players that we haven't really thought about. So yeah, I love it.
Yeah, because like I agree, because like Arsenal, City, they do have good fixtures in this, but we're already like loaded up on them. United also have a set of fixtures in the middle as well, but we're already loaded up on them. So that's why I decided no point in like discussing on them. Maybe Chelsea and Spurs people are starting to load up on, but still questions on which players to kind of go for, which is why I've added them as well.
I think so. Yeah, it's a really timely conversation because you would have seen this on your Twitter feed as well. Everyone's talking about Maddison versus Sterling, so I'm sure that there's going to be some conversation around that today as well. Yeah, and people are, obviously thinking about like removing players from their teams as well. So, one of the questions I was asking someone earlier today is that if you're thinking about getting rid of Rashford, is that because you've already got Bruno and you're getting rid of Rashford? And, so there's a lot of people that are jumping off of their, Arsenal, Man United players to jump on, the Spurs and Chelsea, for example. But we've got teams like Newcastle, that are going to soon become, high priority players that we want to bring into our teams. And, there are some people I imagine that are starting to think about that now. So it's definitely a timely conversation. It's really timely for me because, I actually started planning, on my, I don't know if you can see like my back of my board over here. I realize it's on the screen there. But I started planning and, started marking out which sort of, time period we have the Europa League and the Champions League and the international break and all of that, just to kind of get a sense of what's happening where. And obviously there's loads of charts and things like that for it. So yeah, no, it's a really timely conversation.
So since you added that Europa League and everything, I should add, now we're going to get the draw for the Champions League and the Europa League. I think Champions League this Thursday, Europa League probably Friday. I might be wrong on that, along with the Conference League.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. For the right time zones. Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah.
Sorry, external background noise if you're in this thing. But the one thing to mention with this is Newcastle and Villa, out of these two teams, are teams that we haven't probably seen in Europe too much. And that is, we need to take a pinch of salt with that, because we don't know how their managers are going to handle rotation as well.
That's right.
So
that's right.
Even though they're here with this really good fixture run, we kind of need to consider the potential rotation possibility as well, because after Game Week 5, Europe kicks in. So we need to take that into account as well, which we probably won't know at the moment, but we'll get to know once we see them actually playing in Europe.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, that's going to be really interesting actually once we sort of see them in action. Because already, we're thinking about like Botman being injured, for example. We're already thinking about what is that rotation going to look like with, I mean, who's going to be coming in place, right? But also, what does that look like from a European games point of view as well? So, Trippier, like, there's been a lot of conversation recently about, Trippier getting older. What does that look like? But also, what does his replacement look like, or rotation look like? And obviously Livramento, they have Livramento over there. So yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how that sort of pans out. Especially, they've not been in Europe. I don't know, like for some of these teams, they've not been in Europe for a very, very long time.
Yes.
Yeah, so they probably don't even have any players in their teams right now where they've experienced it either. So in terms of, experience and having some of those players, they don't have that right now. So yeah, it's going to be really interesting.
Yeah, true, because they're probably not used to like midweek weekend fixtures. So that will also probably something to kind of wait and see. So before we continue, just shout out to everyone in the chat, to Connor, Roku, Planner, Lucian, Tin, and everyone else who's also watching. So shout out to everyone. Let's get straight into it. Now, let me just switch. All right. So we'll come to these tables as well whenever we need to refer to them. But we'll start off with the first team that's kind of already in its fixture swing, and Spurs. They played one game from the fixture swing. I'm taking this from Mark's stats on Twitter. And basically it's a pass map, and also I've got from Fantasy Football Scout members area the XG shots and XG shots considered of Spurs as well, for their first 3 game weeks. So first of all, what's your thoughts so far on Spurs?
They've been a different team entirely, haven't they? I sort of, when I was doing my spaces, last night, I was talking about Spurs a little bit there, and just Ange Ball and how the new manager, it's definitely like that new manager bounce, right? That we sort of talk about. We're definitely seeing that in action right now. So they just seem like a completely different team in terms of how they sort of set up and all of that. I think I was watching like Match of the Day or some, I don't know, some of the highlights from the match, and the pundits were talking about, do they miss Harry Kane? You really can't tell. You really can't tell whether they're sort of lacking. I mean, obviously they are lacking a number 9. Richarlison's just not really working. But in terms of like how the mentality and how they've gone into some of the games that they've played already, they look really, really good and really sharp. And I think Maddison has been a tremendous addition to that team as well. As have like Porro was really good. Like he's been playing really well. They've got Udogie as well. So there's been some changes, right? And Son sort of playing that captaincy role now as well. And I don't know. I feel like they're just going to get better and better. And maybe it's just maybe it is temporary. Who knows? Like, we don't know. But they've got the fixtures to ease them into a really good rhythm as well. And I think that's the thing that we've got to take into account. Like, they've got a new manager. They've got some really good players there. Yes, they've lost a huge player, in Kane. But at the same time, they've got the fixtures to sort of come together and prove themselves and play in a nice kind of rhythm and with a strategy that Ange wants to play as well. So, yeah, it's really good to see so far. I'm loving it. It's so nice. It's so nice to have an Aussie manager in there as well.
Indeed, and he's playing really good football as well. So, kudos to them. Now, I think the no Europe also probably will help them. Being able to him also be able to get his style of play onto this team. Which also kind of benefits Chelsea as well when we get to Chelsea. But from Spurs' point of view, I think that's obviously the Harry Kane miss may not be as noticeable, but I don't know. Depends on, we won't be able to say what he would have done with Ange in this system. But I think Richarlison, I'm not sure still whether he is that number 9 that they really want. I've seen in a few games where Son does go to that number 9 spot once Richarlison is subbed off. So I don't know if that is something that they may look into, possibly.
Yeah, I reckon so. And I think we might start seeing that as well because, I noticed, and I'm sure you have as well, that, Richarlison's minutes dropped off after each game as well. So I think in the last match, I think they subbed Richarlison off before 60 minutes, which is crazy. So yeah, that's interesting to kind of see that happen. So I think you're onto something there. I reckon Son sort of playing in that number 9 could happen. But we saw also Maddison getting in there as well. So yeah, I think it's going to be a bit of a I think Richarlison will get, the minutes. I'm sure he'll probably start getting subbed on, I reckon, rather than starting matches. I wonder, especially with some of these fixtures that they have, they've got some really good ones coming up at the moment. So I think they've got Burnley next, haven't they? So, again,
they've got Burnley, Sheffield, Arsenal, Liverpool, and then another good run.
Yeah, another good run of fixtures. So I think they've got the fixtures to try it out. And I reckon, we'll start sort of seeing maybe Richarlison being subbed on rather than starting the matches. Or, I can't imagine. I mean, if he got subbed off before 60 minutes,
exactly.
If we had to extrapolate that,
that's probably not as great as well for FPL points as well.
No.
Just based on the pass map, it seems like a lot goes. So number 10 in here is Maddison. So everything feeds towards him.
Everything's going to him.
Yeah, exactly. And then you have 38 as Dogi. He gets a lot of passes as well. And then you got Kulusevski, who's the one who's handling the width on the right side as well. So that's very interesting to see because Maddison is the central figure for this Spurs team and for them clicking as well. And if I was to switch quickly back to the table that I have, where I've just selected players from the 5 teams that we mentioned, and they've had to have an XGI over the last 3 game weeks of 0.99. I've taken 0.99 just so I could add Son and Isak as well, but generally over 1. But Maddison is just right on top there. In terms of XGI, but is also on top for chances created. 9 chances created out of the from these 5 teams. Shots inside the box 7, which is the top 3.
Impressive.
Yeah,
it's impressive.
Penalty area touch is not as high, but still pretty high for a midfielder. And then XA, obviously, we expect his XA to be really high. XG as well, not too bad. XG, not penalty. So good stats from Maddison, and probably, I think, from Spurs' point of view, I would probably want him in, especially if you're wildcarding slightly longer term as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I mean. Like I was chatting in a group chat today where there was a bit of a conversation around jumping on Madison, jumping off Madison, jumping, that kind of thing, which is totally fine. A lot of people will think about, doing that kind of thing, hop on, hop off. But given the fixtures that they have, I think like we can see Madison's price already going up. It's gone
Mm.
up twice already, I think. And we can see that it's probably going up again with that much sort of value tied up as well. You're probably not going to want to jump off of Madison, right? And so yeah, it just doesn't make any sense. I think he's probably going to stay like he's definitely sort of going to be a transfer for me.
Yeah.
And probably going to stay in my team until I probably wildcard. And even then, and those of us that might be thinking about wildcarding later or now, or I think Madison's probably going to stay in there. And given, I think I'm going to look at my board. I think the international break is between 8 and 9.
Yes, that's correct.
And so, like those that are probably thinking about wildcarding around then as well, they're probably going to keep Madison just because, they do have really good fixtures for 9. Game week 9, they've got who have they got? They've got
Let me
Fulham.
bring it up here. Yeah.
Yeah, they've got Fulham game week 9, and then they've got Crystal Palace, and they've got Fulham at home.
Yeah.
And Fulham has actually been one of the worst sides with sort of goals conceded, big chances conceded as well. So yeah, I don't think you're going to want to take him out even when you wildcard if you're wildcarding around that sort of time.
Yeah, exactly. Because even if you look at the tougher fixtures, Arsenal and Liverpool, both are generally good attacking fixtures, at least from Spurs' point of view.
Yeah.
And okay, if you're looking at a defender, it's a different story. But if you're looking at an attacker, and given how much how attacking Spurs are and the amount of chances they create, I generally think he's still a good player to play even in those fixtures.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, you've seen the state of Liverpool right now as well.
And Madison happens to play on Trent's side.
Don't get me started. I'm really nervous about that now. But yeah, look, Liverpool have I was looking at a bit of data earlier just to kind of refresh my memory about, especially like the way I like to play anyway, is I love sort of looking at my, the players that I'm bringing in, especially the opponents that they're going to be playing, in the upcoming fixtures, and how they're sort of like we talked about zonal kind of, data and just a passing network, all of that kind of thing, but also like chances sort of big chances conceded and goals conceded, and just sort of attempts on goal as well, just to get a bit of a sense of where those teams are the weakest, right? And I couldn't actually believe what I was reading. Like Liverpool's actually had 9 big chances, conceded. And of that, obviously they've only let in like 3 goals so far, which is insane because it could have been so much more given how weak the defense has been. So yeah, I think this is where the likes of Madison, who are getting up front, getting in the box, and everything is going to them. And like you say, he's playing on the same side as where Trent is as well. It's not really a difficult. I don't think it's a difficult fixture all of a sudden.
Yeah, exactly. You mentioned 9 big chances, and Villa also with some heavy big chances there.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
So could be really good for him. Now I've also got, just to know where like Spurs play in general, which kind of like shows with the touch map as well in terms of position. Now Richarlison obviously is down in the middle, but Madison and if you look at the in position one, actually, you'll notice that Madison just generally covers quite a large area as well, with Kulusevski holding the width out wide and Dogi on the other side, which kind of shows from the pass map as well. Now, this is where I'm a bit uncertain in terms of like Heung-min Son as well, because it's a pretty small area that he covers. Now, I'd wonder if he was to move to a striker spot, whether that changes or not. I'm still not sure yet, but that's something to kind of wait and see. But from a Spurs point of view, looking at this and also the pass map over here, for me, I look at Spurs players and I go, for me, Madison stands out. Probably Udogi.
Yeah.
And an outside shout for Kulusevski.
Yes, I completely agree. And I think we saw a little bit of action with Kulusevski on the weekend, didn't we? Actually, I'm not sure if you got any if you got an assist or something. I'm actually, I can't remember
Let me bring.
if that was the last game week or the game week before. But yeah, look, I actually had Kulusevski in my team, not last season, the season before, and he was great. He was just so good to have. And I feel like the way Andrew's setting up the team and how they're sort of playing at the moment, it's really set up well for Kulusevski as well. So, and completely agree about Doggy. I think he's definitely on my radar, for the upcoming game weeks as well. But yeah, I think out of those, I'd probably sort of rank them in that particular order as well. So, but even Son, I don't think we've seen Son in his sort of prime in the last sort of so far last season.
Yeah.
Obviously, he was joint, Golden Boot with Salah in the season prior. So last season he just wasn't really, he just seemed out of sorts. But I think we might see something different. I'm really kind of expecting now a bit of a shift and change, especially with like Richarlison sort of not necessarily firing how he ought to be given that sort of transfer and everything. And he looks really frustrated. So I think there's a bit of Son sort of taking on this new sort of role and captaincy and all of that, and sort of trying to steady the ship, that kind of thing. Everything's new, right? New captain, new manager. But I wouldn't be surprised if Son starts to sort of play forward a lot more as well.
Yeah, so there's a comment in the chat from Shubhar, and he says Kulusevski and Son stay too wide with fullbacks who invert basically. So that's kind of true. This is why I'm wondering whether Son will play in that striker spot, because he's the furthest forward from this last game. And you can see he tends to occupy like spaces that are more wider compared to maybe in the box where you would like to see him. So that's something we kind of need to monitor and see. But for the moment, in terms of at least chance creation, we know Kulusevski is going to do chance creation. Maddison is just going to be all over the place, generally speaking.
That's right. I think soon we're probably going to start. I don't know what Maddison's EO is, at the moment. Maybe we can take a quick look at that as well. But I can't imagine him sort of being low by the time that fixture run starts to hit. So obviously he's got Burnley first. And a lot of people are sort of making decision about, I think a lot of people are thinking about Sterling at the moment. Everyone's thinking about which mid to sort of bring in, and we're seeing a lot of, one or the other. But I think, missing out on that Burnley away fixture could be a little bit painful as well.
Oh, well. Yeah, well, sometimes you need information at the
yeah, I know.
points.
And I think, yeah, and you know what? I think that's the other thing to kind of mention as well, right? We're only sort of basing all of this on three games of data. And so it is really hard, to kind of, interpret that and sort of go, yeah, that this is how things are gonna shape up, especially because we're talking about fixture swings, right? So some of these teams have not necessarily played like the toughest opponents yet as well. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see.
Interesting. So that's Spurs. I'll move it on to Chelsea next. Another team that is just started their good fixture run, but theirs kind of last a bit more shorter compared to maybe Spurs. But a team that, at least compared to some of the other teams we're going to discuss, you can kind of see Pocher's formation playing out in the pass map as well. You see how the backline is involved. Interestingly, so number 21 here is Chua, but number 27 is Gusto. Now, I'll be very interested to see whether Gusto continues to play advanced. One thing I've noticed, which the pass map is showing, and also in the Chelsea-Liverpool game as well, I saw when Reece James was playing, a lot of stuff was going down that Chelsea right-hand side. Now, I wonder if that is just because you got Sterling as well on that side, so that's why the ball generally tends to go to that side, compared to maybe Chilwell, who's either wide or inverted, depending on the situation. So a lot of Chelsea's attack right now seems to be focused more right oriented on their flank. Then you have 15 is Jackson, and then you got number 8, Enzo Fernandez. If I going back to this one, I think Enzo Fernandez is 5th on this list for XGI, which is a bit, I guess, that involves the penalty as well. but he's actually, yeah, it was a penalty because actually non-penalty is 0.46. But his XA is still pretty high. Third.
We've just had someone in the chat say we can't see the pass map.
Oh, sorry. My bad. Didn't switch. Okay, going back to the pass map.
Back it up.
Okay, rewind. Pass map. Pochettino's pass map. I mean, the team, you can kind of see it's playing out as we kind of expect, with the backline and a lot going towards the right side of Chelsea. So you can see Udogie, number 27, very heavily involved. And then obviously Sterling is being fed by the likes of Gallagher and Udogie. So
yeah,
very heavily right-sided play from Chelsea. Now, I don't know if there's still a few days left in the window. You never know with Todd Bowley, he could go and sign out another winger and then things
probably
change.
knowing them.
Yeah, exactly. But for now, it looks like a very right-sided, heavy attack, at least from Chelsea.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
And then I was going to the Enzo point of him being like one of the other involved players and a high XGI. Obviously hasn't returned in terms of points. Could still be on penalties as well, so maybe something to consider.
Yeah, I was definitely thinking about Enzo. I think given that his price is what, 5.5, is it?
Yes, 5 million.
Oh my god, is he only 5? Jeez. Yeah, there you go. You know, I mean, given he's only 5, I think he's going under the radar a little bit as well. Like he has looked phenomenal. Like his passing has been really, really good to watch, and it's a shame like that it's not really converted to returns. And yeah, I'm not sure about the pens actually. I can't imagine like him being taken off the pens after that one pen miss.
Yeah.
But given that I mean, who was taking the pens before? Was it sort of
they had Jorginho?
That's right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I'm not sure if I've. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
The penalty takers have been falling.
Yeah. And I don't suppose they're going to pass it to Chilwell, right? Because he might, I don't know, not shoot.
I don't know. I know, right? He would probably be in front of goal and still decide whether he needs to shoot or not.
Yeah, do I shoot? Yeah. Do I not? Do I pass?
Yeah, exactly. It's like Madison said on his Instagram. We need to teach you how to shoot. But yeah, I think Enzo is on top here, but Jackson is another one. Sterling, the talk of the town, at least for the moment, after his 19-point haul. Where do you stand with all of this in terms of Chelsea players?
Oh my gosh. So this is going to be very team dependent, I feel. Super team dependent in the sense that obviously if we could play, I think like someone sort of was joking about this in one of the chats I was in, like we need like 7 or 8 midfield spots at the moment. And I think that's the issue that we have. Like the midfield is it's prime real estate at the moment, and there are too many players that we're considering. And so like for someone like me, like personally, I had a forward spot up for grabs because I had João Pedro in that forward spot. So for me, it was easiest to make a transfer this week, and look, I did make an early transfer. It was a bit of a rage transfer out. So I made an early transfer from João Pedro to Jackson. And for me, that made sense because I already knew that I may take a hit or I may sort of decide very late whether I want to go one of my, Arsenal or United mids to a Maddison. So I'd already made up my mind that I wanted Maddison purely because I was looking at these fixtures, looking at some of this data and thinking, holy shit, how do I not have him in my team? So, I think that sort of made me think that the only sort of hope I have to try and spread some of the the points, if I was to gain some points, it would be to try and get like a Jackson in or something like that, just because I've only got Chilwell in my team right now. So I think this is going to be super team dependent, like in terms of that sort of Sterling and Maddison debate. Like who do you have the slot for? Because we're all stacked in the midfield at the moment, and that template is definitely strong now. And a lot of people who are still catching up, they're bringing in the likes of Mbomo and a couple of other sort of players in that mid. And Yeah, so it's going to be interesting. But I personally went down the Jackson pathway. Couple of reasons. So obviously, my team allowed for me to take a move with Jack,
Mm.
bring Jackson in. But also, I was thinking about like the momentum that someone like like a team like Chelsea, given the fixtures that they have, but also the momentum that Jackson may now have
Mm.
after getting his first goal, and sort of and I feel like they're getting in their stride a little bit as well. It's still up in the air. Like they've not necessarily had the easiest fixtures. I mean, they had Liverpool to start with, right? So there's not that much data to go by. But look, Sterling still looked really, really good,
Mm.
out there. And someone, Shub Curran's just mentioned about playing the seniority card and,
Yeah,
and sort
on
of for
pens.
the
Yeah.
pens. Yeah, that's a possibility, right? Like we don't know. Um, but look, from that point of view, I really like the opportunity that Jackson sort of, presents as
Mm.
well. I think he's right up there. Everything is going to go through him as well. Like he's playing in the box, right? So
He's
playing that
a,
9 role.
he's a
Yeah.
hard worker. If you look at the out of position, he
Yeah,
holds
there
a
you go.
huge point of the box, the whole
He needs
pitch.
to stay up
Yeah.
there. Like, what is he doing?
But yeah, I mean, he when they're in position, he is like in the middle. You kind of see him, Chilwell, and Sterling like the most attacking out of the Chelsea players.
Yeah, isn't
Um,
that interesting?
yeah, so
Yeah.
I do think, again, like you said, it's all squad dependent, and
Mm.
you're going to miss out on points somewhere, but it depends on how you fight your battles. So you
Yeah,
could either go, like you mentioned, like a Madison or a Sterling, or you go both
that's
and then you
right.
lose out on someone else potentially.
That's right.
Um, Chilwell is probably right now in almost everyone's teams. Then you go
Yeah.
Jackson. Then your question is, who do you go as a third one? Do you go for a Gusto potentially
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
that third or fourth defensive spot? Maybe this weekend a lot of people with Gabriel and Estupinan wondering what to
Mm.
do. Start either one
Mm.
of them or even go and start Gusto. That's a possibility as well.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely. And I think those that have sort of defender issues right now, like I'm someone that has a
mm,
defender issue. I've still got Gabriel in my team, and he's just had another price drop,
mm,
right? And so I'm not happy about that. But the way I'm looking at it at the moment is that there are some really good fixtures that probably need to be attacked
mm,
rather than sort of focusing on my defense. So I've made a conscious decision to try and bring in at least one at the moment, but the second attacker as well, to try and attack some of these fixtures. But yeah, it depends what what battle you're fighting at the
yeah.
moment with your team. And so yeah, it makes a lot of sense to go down the Gusto pathway as well. How long is James out actually? Like, what do we know about his
I was
his
looking for
injury?
it yesterday. In terms of quotes, and all I could find is he's out for either a couple of weeks. Some said a month.
Mm,
No proper time. Which is why I was uncertain on to go for Gusto or not. It's a
yeah,
slight worry behind my head. Now, if I knew if James was out for a couple of months, then I would easily go for Gusto because I'm like, Chelsea has run is only until game week 8.
yeah,
James is
yeah.
probably not going to come back before then. I'm happy to have.
Mm, mm.
So maybe if we get some news from Poch, possibly it becomes a really good option. If we don't,
Yeah, I
then it's
hope.
a bit of a problem.
Yeah, I hope so. Because at the moment, like I'm also thinking about like I know we've already sort of discussed Spurs and we but if you're thinking about defender, yeah, I think it's really between some of those some like either Gusto as the second sort of defender path. I know a lot of people are also. I know we haven't sort of covered like we're not covering goalkeepers as
Mm,
such, but Sanchez has become a viable option for many as well. Like those of us that have Pickford,
mm.
in our as our
Should
goalkeeper.
should add Vicario as well from Spurs
That's
since
right.
we
Yeah.
finished on Spurs.
Yeah,
But yep.
seems to be doing really good. Exactly. Exactly. So I think from that perspective, I think like there's other like burning sort of issues in some of our teams. So those of us that have like Gabriel, those of us that are, not trusting. I mean, from a clean sheet point of view, there's not been that many teams that have maintained a clean sheet.
Mm,
And so, when we're thinking about sort of, our defense, there's not that many like teams you can lean to. So this is now coming down to the attack,
mm,
right? So
mm.
depending on however long James is out, I think Gusto is a fantastic pick. But if everyone's doing like if like my mind is going towards, how do we attack some of these
Yeah.
fixtures? So do you want to use up that second Chelsea spot with a defender, or do you
Mm,
want to bring Jackson and Sterling at that point?
I mean, there's a point made from James where he goes, you could go Sterling and then in game week 8 switch it to Madison if you wanted, because Madison's fixtures are still pretty good after that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think those of us that I personally haven't sort of played that strategy previously. I feel like I'm still sort of learning I'm learning what my approach and my strategy is at the moment. But I haven't sort of necessarily done the, bring in a player and then immediately transfer them out. Like I was very close in thinking that with West Ham's fixtures, they're playing Luton next. And so I did think, do I bring in like a Bowen or a Ward-Prowse or something like that and just take a punt like for 1 week? But that's not the style of play that I've sort of done previously. And so I'm hesitant to do the, jump on, jump off to another player. But that's a really good point.
Yeah, but this will be like a slightly longer. You have Sterling now, and then you go on to like game week 8, and then you move him out, which could work, but could also backfire if you have other fires elsewhere. Then you're stuck with Sterling kind of situation. So
yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I have seen people talk about jump onto Sterling now, and then because they're playing Forest. But in terms of Forest, like I don't know if it's worth talking about Forest a little bit, just with how they've been conceding as well. So Forest have obviously this is a home match for Chelsea, so that's a huge advantage there. But Forest have, conceded like 6 big chances, which isn't that high really when you compare it with who Chelsea are playing next, which is Bournemouth, and they've conceded like 9 big chances. So when you sort of look at it from that point of view, and I know again, we're sort of basing this on three games of data, so it's not that much either. But Forest seem to be quite tight in general, although Chelsea are playing home as well, and they've got into a bit of a rhythm and stride as well, so it'll be interesting actually.
I think it's like Forest will be a good team, but again we're still looking at like at the longer picture as well, where sometimes exactly like this week people who bought in Puemo didn't really do well, but that was against Crystal Palace, and as you can see from the defensive data, Crystal Palace are third.
That's right.
So
that's right.
It's not I guess it's not buying just for that 1 week, but also for like the next couple of weeks as well. So we kind of have to accept that going to lose. There are going to be games where he's going to get 2 pointers or something.
Definitely.
So that's a few things, but I guess overall looks like a good decision. We'll have to wait and see whether it ends up becoming a good decision. That's the thing.
Yeah, definitely. And I think this is where, like, given that there are so many viable options for Chelsea as well, Enzo sort of, comes down in the bottom of that. I feel, if I had to sort of rank in order of kind of priority, he would come to the bottom of that list, as a bit of an enabler at that sort of 5 mil sort of mark. And but is that also a sort of a cost kind of related bias there as well, that because he's priced so low that we're thinking that actually, he's probably not going to be a good option as well. But I think the data suggests that there is potential there, but I think given that there's Gusto at the moment, there's obviously Chilwell's in everyone's teams pretty much, but given there's Gusto and then there's Sterling and Jackson, Enzo's we're already sort of competing for that spot anyway. It's going to be a challenge bringing him in, but that might be a good sort of low EO pick.
Yeah, exactly, possibly. There's a comment saying that Chelsea are set to sign another keeper, so maybe you have to be careful with Sanchez, I guess.
Oh no, Paul Sanchez, you've got a feel for him, right? Like, got replaced by Steele, and now,
potentially, but we don't know. But there is always that problem. Same thing with like Ramsdale and Rhea. So
that's it. Yeah.
All right. So from Chelsea on to, I think this is Newcastle, this section, but we'll get to Liverpool as well. But we'll start with Newcastle. This might be slightly altered by the fact of the red card as well. Potentially, it could have been impacted the passing network. So that's something that we might have to kind of keep in mind when talking about it. But one thing that was noted from this was number 10 is Anthony Gordon. Got a lot of service of the ball, and then it went to number 8 and 2, which is I think Tonali and Trippier. Obviously going to be very involved in terms of creating from their side. And 24 was Almiron, so he was more deeper to try and handle the, I guess you have on that side, you have Trent. No, not Trent. You have Robertson and Diaz bombing down his side. So I guess there was more play happening from Newcastle's point of view, targeting Trent with Gordon.
Yeah.
And then obviously from the right-hand side, there was a lot of small passes there. But Isak kind of isolated in this specific situation.
Yeah, that was interesting, wasn't it? Yeah.
But again, this is one team that we haven't seen in Europe, and Europe's about to kick.
Oh, there's so much. There's so much unknown. I feel like there's so much unknown, at the moment. I mean, I feel like we know Newcastle really well now, like just from last season, and they played phenomenally. And I can't remember. So obviously they played Liverpool last game week, but I can't remember who they played in their first two fixtures. But it seems like they've not had the best sort of, fixture, like first three fixtures, where we can sort of take a good representation of the slightly easier fixtures that they've got coming up as well. So it's a bit of a tricky one, I think, with Newcastle, because we've seen what they can do, right? We've seen that. I mean,
Man City and Aston Villa, by the way, the first two.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And Aston Villa has been insane as well. Like they've been playing really well. So yeah, there you go. And like James in the chat just said, asked, is Trippier an option for Stupinian? We've not seen that much of Trippier either. Like, in terms of attacking returns, he's not been getting those, attacking returns either. So it's really difficult to sort of, choose at the moment, like between them. But yeah, like you say, there's Europe as well. So it's just going to be a completely different kettle of worm. Like I feel like we almost have to treat them as they proved that they're a top four side last season. But I think, they're going to have to prove they're a top four side when they start playing, in Europe as well. So, with all that rotation and the stress of like, playing twice a week, all of that, it's going to be really interesting to see. And they've got the fixture run for it, right? So of course the first two fixtures are going to be a little bit tricky. So they've got they've got Brighton and then they've got Brentford coming up.
Yep.
In 4 and 5. But then they've got Sheffield, they've got Burnley, West Ham, Palace, Wolves, so they've definitely got but obviously there is Europe in between as well. So yeah, it's going to be interesting how they line up. But I don't know, I feel like that I think Newcastle players are probably going to be the ones that are going to break the template possibly, a lot more than what we realize out of all of the teams, because obviously we're thinking about some of the other teams that we've talked about, some of the players from those teams. I think they're sort of, picks that we're already sort of sensing that would be good to keep and stay in the team, whilst, some might be thinking about jumping off of them. But Newcastle players are the ones that are going to be completely new in our realm of, whether we want them or not, based on very little data to go by already. But yeah, I think like this is where the striker spots are probably, the forward spots are probably going to be the most interesting.
Yes.
To try and sort of, have. I'm not sure what that data is looking like right now. Because
well, the thing is, from a Newcastle point of view, we've already seen like Eddie Howe loves to rotate Wilson and Isak when they get into like midweek fixtures and whatnot. Now, obviously, the good run starts from Gameweek 6. But the problem with that is they've just played a Champions League fixture. Now, in that Champions League fixture, depending on who they get this Thursday, in terms of the group stages and whatnot, we could potentially see maybe if Wilson starts that, then you could probably say, okay, Isak is going to start this, the midweek fixture, but I mean the Premier League fixture. But then if the Champions League fixture is an easy game and Wilson starts that, what is to say that Wilson's going to start the tough Champions League fixture game as well?
Exactly. Yeah, and we've seen them both start together as well, right? Like we've seen them sort of, play together. Wilson's played very centered, and Isak's played on the left, I believe, as well. So yeah, it's definitely gonna be interesting. Like I was surprised that against Liverpool that Isak got taken off for Wilson and not necessarily Wilson coming on, to try and sort of hammer in a few more goals, to a 10-sided, Liverpool, to try and sort of, seal the deal on that, lead that they had. So yeah, it was an opportunity to try out like them playing together, but maybe that was a sign of what we're going to see with Newcastle as well, where they're probably not going to be playing side by side. They're probably going to be rotated. That's part of the plan. They're going to be, so Yeah, it's gonna be really tough, like trying to pick between them, I think, and I think this is where we've got to start sort of looking at that the midfield spots as well, and which ones are sort of looking, pretty decent. Like Gordon, for example, looked phenomenal against Liverpool. Like he was just bombing it down, and on a Trent's flank, and that was really you could
Yeah.
see. I mean, within the first couple of minutes, right? It was like a disaster
Mm.
class there. So yeah, so you've got players like Almiron, got players like Gordon. I
Harvey Barnes,
think,
by the way, also on the
Harvey
best. Yeah.
Barnes. Yes, exactly. And I know like Harvey Barnes didn't start against Liverpool, but
Mm.
again, is another player that they've got really good squad depth
Yeah.
actually. Like, and they're probably not sort of done, I imagine, the transfer window either. Like, just kind of. I'm making a massive presumption that everyone's trying to bring in a few more players
Yeah.
before the
No, that's fair
deadline.
enough. Yeah. I mean, like
But
you meant
yeah,
just
Harvey Barnes looked really good.
yeah, just to mention, like you mentioned that Isak played on the left last season, but then that they didn't have a left side. Now they have Harvey Barnes and Anthony Gordon who can play that spot.
That's right. That's
So
right.
that's why I guess you're probably going to see Isak and Wilson being the ones who just get rotated within each other.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
and then again, now we mentioned Trippier, and Shubharan has also mentioned Trippier, whether it's a rotation
Yeah.
risk with Europe, with Livramento also there now in the club.
Yeah.
So we kind of had to wait and see because obviously Botman's injured as well. So don't know how that affects Newcastle. Does that mean that Livramento plays right back, Trippier moves left back, and does
Yeah.
it change in terms of Newcastle's system? So those are a few things I guess we kind of had to wait and see as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think I feel like so do we know when Newcastle's first European match will
It'll be after
be?
Gameweek 5. That's when Europe kicks off.
After, yeah, that's right. So okay, so we're not really going to know until after game week 5.
Mm.
So yeah, so we're then looking at fixtures like Sheffield and Burnley, and so yeah, and they're the easier ones.
Exactly. But
So
then the thing is, the Sheffield one is just after Europe. So do you jump onto them immediately, or do you have, again, just like the Chelsea and the Spurs one, where you miss out
just
on
need
one
to,
good game just for a bit more info?
yeah.
That's the thing.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think this is where like my mind is going towards, bringing in one of the defenders earlier than the attackers, because we just don't know, like, again, from that attacking standpoint. I think like I'd be inclined to jump off of like Jackson, for example. I don't know if I want to play like more than two forward spots, because the midfield is so good right now. There's so many good options. And so if we're all sort of skimping out on our defense, right, like just playing three at the back, and then we're maximizing in our midfield, then that only leaves, two spots, up front, or one spot up front if you want to play an extra defender, right? And so, from that point of view, are you going to be able to hold Jackson? And I mean, look, I'm putting the other spot for
Yeah.
Haaland, right? Unless we jump off of Haaland, which
No,
is
no,
a
no,
whole
no.
other conversation.
Well, it looks like we want to play a midfield 5 now, but that could change if forwards
That could
start
change.
performing. Right now, you don't really.
That's
There
right.
aren't forwards putting their hands up and forcing us to make a decision whether we play a
Yeah.
5 or a 3 up front. Now, obviously, Isak or Wilson could potentially change that.
Yeah.
Jackson, if he starts performing, could change that as well.
Yep. And we haven't even touched on Aston Villa. So
No,
yeah.
exactly. Watkins as well. And I know I haven't added it in here, but like Arsenal with Gabriel Jesus back potentially.
Absolutely.
United with Højlund potentially back as well.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. And if Darwin starts starting.
Exactly. Again, Darwin as well. So there are these strikers who could make us change to a front three, but we don't know yet.
I couldn't agree more, but I think like, again, because like and so this is where it gets really tricky, right? Because in the past we had Kane. We had Kane, and so a lot of FPL managers were going down the pathway of having Haaland and Kane, or it was having, Haaland and Salah. And so and then there were like the threemiums occasionally as well, which sort of, made the rest of the team look terrible. But now that we're not really doing that, it feels like, you're either in the Salah, Salah and the Haaland camp,
Mm.
and then you're limited on who you can bring in your mid and your forwards anyway. Or you're in the Haaland only camp, just one premium camp. And so, there's money to spend. And so the idea of having so much money left in the bank is just a unfathomable thing, right? Like people are not really getting used to that idea of I've got 6 mil in the bank to spend on something. People want to spend it as well. So yeah, it's going to be interesting actually how that sort of unfolds. But yeah, look, it feels like we're going to shift that, right? We're going to go back to playing, probably 3-4-3.
Yeah, that's what probably we'll have to wait and see. Now, the XG shots in this with regards to Newcastle, a lot is inside the box. So which is why I'm like, maybe a Gordon, an Isak could potentially thrive. Maybe even a Wilson. Depends on the rotation with there.
Yeah.
Obviously, Estupinan is about to have a tough run of fixtures. That managers asking like Shubharan, like there was, or not, like James mentioned, is Trippier an option for Estupinan? Probably, maybe.
Yeah, I don't see why not. I don't see why not. But we just, again, like, and this is why, like, this series, that you've started is really useful because, I think like most of the content that we see that is being that's out there at the moment is talking about like the gut feels of who do you go with right now, right? And so this is where like if you're trying to get ahead, then people are not thinking about Trippier because precisely because he's not firing. Like if he was sort of firing right now, right, despite the 6.5 price tag on him, people will probably jump to him. But it's very likely that he becomes a viable option, especially if you want to jump off of his Stupinian and jump onto another. And and people are hesitant to go to. I mean, we haven't got to Liverpool yet, but people are hesitant to go to Trent. I remember seeing like a million polls on Twitter earlier today or yesterday. Sort of, would you have Trippier in your team if you were only paying 6 mil? And it's like 75% of people said no, and it's like, really though, because if they start sort of firing. Maybe you would.
I guess that's where the question lies. Like, because Trippier was such a huge bonus point monster last season.
Oh, now wasn't he the highest sort of scoring defender?
Yes. So now with Gordon in there, with Tonali in there, I'm wondering how much of the bonus is being eaten up by these players as well. That's something that we probably have to wait and see. But maybe he is an option. But I also think. We mentioned the keepers. Nick Pope. Not a bad option.
Absolutely.
At least one player who's not going to get rotated, most likely.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's where like we've I think that's the realistic sort of lens, like I at the moment I've been looking at, Fabian Schär as well, like given Botman's injured at the moment. And so, I'm sort of on the market, for going shopping for keepers and for defenders, right? I've got Gabriel as an issue, and I've got Pickford, this long-standing issue he's probably going to become. So can I nip that in the bud earlier? I don't know, maybe. So I am looking at like Pope, I'm looking at Fabian Schär, as an option. But then you've got the likes of like Udogie and, so there are a couple of options emerging, right? Like including Vicario as well. So yeah, I think there's some really good shouts there. But you're right, Pope is probably going to be the most stable, player at the moment that's probably not going to go through that rotation. Or actually, who is their second keeper? I can't imagine that they'll rotate. Yeah, okay. Well,
I probably don't think
I can't imagine them rotating keepers anyway.
So Newcastle, I think for now, at least for me, I think I do like either a Pope or maybe a Trippier. Although Trippier, I don't mind also slightly waiting on that. The attacking options for the moment, Gordon seems to be the better one compared to Isak. But those are like the three players that I'd probably go.
Yeah, absolutely. What have we got Gordon priced at? It's like 5 mil, 5.5.
Do I have him on my this thing?
I think
Gordon is 5.5.
I think he's 5. Yeah, 5.5. Okay, yeah. Yeah,
So,
that's really reasonable.
mm,
Not that we're not that we need the money right
yeah,
now.
but like he is on this list as well. Like touches in the penalty area, 10 touches, 4 chances
Yeah, really
created.
impressive.
So
Yeah.
he's one of the, at least from these players who are performing with an XGI over one in XGI over 1 in 3 games. And yeah, someone to probably consider.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, look, he played so like obviously this was before the send off, against Liverpool. But he was in that 5 minutes or so, he just looked fantastic. And so yes, we've got we've got sort of the issue of sort of Trent and our defense is not very good at the moment. So it is a concern, but there are so many, like if you look at their fixtures, right, there are so many teams that are equally in that same position, if not worse. So yeah, I think Gordon's a great option, but who's he, like he was rotating with Barnes, right?
Harvey Barnes, yeah.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I think like that would be a wait for me in terms of, how are they rotating with the European matches, So I think the first sort of point of like going to a Newcastle player is probably going to be in the defense side of things.
There's although a mention of the defense does look shaky, but we'll see. We'll have to wait and see. With
I know, yeah.
Good fixtures, does that thing change or not? Because obviously they've played some tough teams, so
yes,
kind of have to wait and see whether that changes.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so Newcastle is a slightly wait and see. Maybe you might have to sacrifice one good game as well, just for more info with Champions League. Potentially.
Absolutely. Yeah, I reckon so.
All right, next up. This one is Liverpool. Now, from watching this, or not, I didn't watch this game because it was way too late. From watching the one, I watched the Chelsea-Liverpool one as well.
Yeah.
And obviously the Bournemouth one as well, because I was a Salah captain and wasn't very impressed. But he's gone.
Oh man, yeah, same.
I guess the things to notice is obviously Salah number 11 here, and number 18 is Gakpo, both very isolated. Now again, this could have been influenced because of the red card decision, so that kind of has to be taken into account as well. And I guess number 30, who is 32, is Matip, and then you have Trent. But I do think Trent, if I was to switch it to this one, Szoboszlai and Trent, obviously very involved in each other's areas quite a lot. Szoboszlai, the one, is basically the machine of Liverpool's midfield, going all covering everything.
And I think that's where we're seeing a little bit of less of Salah as well.
He's very central in this one when in position, but I think when Darwin comes, he's more wider.
Yeah, he is wider, but I think because Szoboszlai can play up that, like he's been getting into that position as well. I think like in terms of, I think we're going to see more of that shift in Salah as well. I think his price tag at the moment obviously wasn't considered when some of these other players were coming in, McAllister coming in, Szoboszlai coming in. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how Salah's game is going to change as well. Seems to be a bit of a contention point as well in terms of whether he'll stay or not and what's going on there. I think he'll most
likely stay. I think
stay the season. Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. I think like dropping to 10 men during that match, they had to restructure entirely, right? Because if you think about it, they probably haven't necessarily factored in. If you think about who got sent off, it was VVD. They haven't factored in, having a send off for someone like the most sort of stable defender that they have, right? And so it was really interesting to see that that chart, which was. I wasn't expecting that.
This one.
Just that one. And I think later on as well, when Jota was on, you could see Jota and Salah sort of like just kind of, they were swapping sides a few times as well. And that was really interesting as well, like kind of seeing them kind of switch sides when Nunez had come on, Darwin was on, and they were like swapping sides between themselves. And so, it's really weird thing to say, but they played so much better being down to 10 men. But that's something, is probably, I reckon Klopp, I would imagine they know that as well, and, something to consider.
Yeah, because like when you see with all the substitutions made, Salah is the one further forward, and then
Yeah.
obviously you have Gakpo here in the middle, Salah more central, and then I
Yep.
think this is Soboslai, as you can see, all over the place.
Yeah, look at that.
Yeah, but then when you bring on the subs, here comes Jota, and this is Darwin Núñez, obviously the further forward one.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that kind of shows that he will. Now the question is he going to be used more often? Is one question,
so.
and obviously you mentioned the swap in. I think
Yeah.
Jota, at least for me, I still think Jota is probably the best FPL asset for Liverpool at the moment.
Yes.
In terms of just consistent points, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. My it's a shame that we don't have enough data on Diaz, at the moment, because like obviously he got subbed off really, really early. A poor guy, like, did you see I don't know if you saw his face, like he looked devastated just being subbed off. But Diaz is another player that has, like he's just phenomenal on the pitch as well. So we don't have like enough data, I feel like, because McAllister got sent off in the Bournemouth match as well, so they had to like restructure for the rest of the remainder of that game as well. So but I think Darwin's going to get more minutes. Like he's obviously sort of dealing with a lot of confidence related issues, a lot of clinical sort of issues as well with his how he's finishing things. And I was reading an article about the training that he's undergoing at the moment with like repositioning his sort of non-striking foot and how he's sort of playing at the moment and just changing his sort of and we're talking about years and years worth of like the way you play, the way you sort of position yourself, your body, your foot, all of that. We're talking about years of that, right? Like to try and shift that is going to be a challenge. But what we saw in Darwin, when it counted the most, was some really good clinical finishing as well. So I think there's more to see there. And I reckon, I look, in the next fixture against Villa, I don't know, like it's really hard to say that he's definitely going to get a start, because I feel like Klopp's probably going to play the same formation that he did against Newcastle. And we don't know what's going on with the red card sort of situation as well, and what that's going to look like. But they actually did really well. And I don't know if that's because Newcastle actually didn't sort of capitalize on the opportunity to get some goals in against Liverpool, being sort of down to 10 men and everything, or whether the strategy that Liverpool sort of immediately sort of switched over to, being down to 10, was I'm not sure like what was better there. But I do think that if not in the next game, like he's probably going to get more minutes in the next game, or he'll probably start. It's likely he'll start and probably get subbed off for Gakpo, for example. It's possible. But yeah, it's going to be interesting how that one goes, because Villa is not an easy fixture.
No. Yeah, that's what, they're not an easy fixture. No. But then the fixtures afterwards are not too bad.
So yeah, that's right. Yeah.
If people are willing to wait one fixture, because after that, I think Liverpool do turn a corner in terms of their fixtures. You got Wolves, West Ham, Spurs and Brighton could be a good attacking fixture, because they haven't been able to keep clean sheets per se in terms of Brighton's case. Then you have Everton, Forest, Luton. I mean, that's a good run of fixtures that you probably want a Liverpool attacker. Yeah. And then that's where you go, which one?
Yeah, I know. And I think that's where it gets really tricky as well. I was just going to say, actually, before sort of, like, as I was looking at a little bit more data on Villa as well, I think Villa's sort of conceded like 10 big chances as well, I believe. So actually, yeah, it's not an easy fixture, but they are conceding, as well. And, they've conceded like 6 goals already as well. So yeah, that'll be, I think that I feel like that's going to potentially be a goals fest. There's going to be lots of goals on either side, right? Like we know Liverpool can't keep clean sheets. So, it's going to be, it's going to be interesting from a, how that's going to work out. But yeah, I think like if I had to pick for my team at the moment, like which player to go with, I'd be eyeing up Diaz and Jota. As my sort of, midfield options. I think like, because the other forward spots have better players to put in them right now, with the likes of Watkins, with the likes of Jackson, and people that still have will have, players like Alvarez up front as well, those that didn't go down the Foden pathway. Darwin's probably going to be the bottom of the list until we start seeing more of Darwin anyway, and more of him sort of shooting and getting in, getting in those positions and actually finishing off those chances as well.
That's for sure.
I feel like Darwin and Jackson are quite similar in how they're playing as well. So it'll be interesting. But Darwin definitely for probably the later fixtures that Liverpool have, and this is probably around the time where those of us that are thinking about, wildcarding between 8 and 9.
Yeah.
Is it 8 and 9? 7 and 8?
Yeah, 8 and
9. I keep looking at my board.
8
and 9. Yeah. So those of us thinking about wildcarding between 8 and 9, if you look at who they have, they've got Brighton in 8, and then they've got
then
Everton,
you wildcard
and then
after that. And then,
exactly. Yeah.
And then you get your Everton, Forest, Luton, 3 good fixtures. Yeah.
That's right. Yep. That's right. So I think at that point, Salah becomes a viable option, but I think we'll have then enough data to work out what Salah's positioning is going to be like as well, because again, it's Szoboszlai's first season as well. So, it's going to be interesting how, and look, Harvey Elliott looked great, when he came on. So it's I think it's going to be new as well all round. They've got a whole midfield that's new at the moment.
Agreed. I don't know, still a few days left in the window. You never know, another midfielder could come in.
Oh yeah. Never mind midfield. I feel like we need to focus on our defense right now.
That's also true.
We got Endo as well.
So wait and see with Liverpool, but I think Jota and Diaz probably the only two for the moment.
Yeah, I reckon so. I think as the good kind of, look, the minutes is always going to be an issue. And I think this is where, when your midfield spots are like prime real estate, it's going to be a challenge to try and sort of, put your chips down for a Diaz or a Jota who are, there is some minutes and rotations risk there as well.
Yep, fair enough. All right, moving on with Matthew mentioning Diaby from Gameweek 8, Aston Villa.
Why not earlier?
True. Why not earlier? Again, seems okay. Now Diaby and this is 19. Watkins is a bit isolated in this. A lot happened via Cash playing that very more attacking fullback spot. With Villa, if you look at the XG shots, a lot of it is central, like big shots centrally, and they concede quite a lot of smaller opportunities, I would say. It's I don't know. I think Diaby, again, another midfielder of like who you might want with a good run of fixtures. Watkins, I think we kind of have. I don't mind keeping him. I think he will tick over like Kane used to do last season. But I don't know if he'll get the high point scores as well.
Yeah, has he got a goal? I don't think he's got any goals yet.
I don't think so. No.
I feel like I might be wrong about that. It feels difficult to imagine that he hasn't got a goal.
No, 0. Yeah, here we
go. There you go. Yeah, he's assisted.
Yeah.
But he, like you say, he's ticking away at the moment.
But he has a high XG non-penalty, 1.57. So he should be scoring, but
he should be scoring.
Yeah. He hasn't finished his chances yet, so that's something we kind of have to see. He's also the highest big chances out of this lot.
Yeah.
Of the players, yes. He's got a second highest, in terms of Watkins. So Jackson first and then Watkins second. So they're creating chances. He's probably not putting it away. That's something to kind of wait and see. But from an Aston Villa point of view, switching to Villa, it's between him and Diaby. Again, midfield, prime real estate. So it's the question is, do you want Diaby now, or do you want Diaby, like Matthew said, maybe Gameweek 8? There's Matty Cash, but again, this comes into Europe as well. Rotation with Unai Emery.
Rotation, yes, exactly.
How much is he going to focus? Moreno from injury, once he's back, does that change the whole fullback system of Aston Villa? How does that impact it? So that's just another thing to kind of wait and see for.
Yeah, definitely. I think if I was, I think a lot of people already have Diaby as well in their team. And so, I think the question is whether you keep him, if you have him now. through some of the tougher sort of fixtures coming up. And the thing is, like we say, tougher fixtures again, right? So Chelsea's conceding a lot of goals, at the moment. Well, and Liverpool obviously have conceded like 9 big chances, at the moment as well. So, it's not like some of these players like Watkins, Diaby don't have the opportunity to finish off, the chances that are being created, right? And we're seeing Diaby I think Diaby's got how many goals? Like he's already sort of scored like 2 goals, 3 goals. 2 goals, I think.
Diaby, he's got 2 goals. Yes, 2 goals and 1 assist.
1 assist, yeah, which is pretty good. I mean, we're talking about like three weeks of data. It's not that much either, but that's really impressive so far. And so yeah, it is really tough, like from that point of view. But again, when we think about sort of how lowly owned Diaby is at the moment, and we're talking about sort of breaking the template a little bit, right? Then are these players, worth sort of jumping on at that little bit earlier? So they've got Crystal Palace at home, in game week 5. Is that an opportunity to jump on Diaby a little bit earlier and just rotate like with some of the viable forward spots that we've got available now as well, where, we're thinking about the likes of, Jackson and, those that still have Alvarez. Because I think, when so, in terms of like your rotation with your players, that doesn't stop you from, playing your midfield spots. It just means that you're rotating because, like, again, Diaby is probably someone. I mean, how much is Diaby actually? Is he sort of?
At the moment.
Yeah, so there you go. Like you may want to, again, if you're looking at it from a price point of view as well, like a cost of that player, then you're more likely to bench Diaby over, benching Sterling or Maddison or something like that, depending on who you have in the mid. So is there a bit of a rotation that can be done there? And how long are we holding on to Mbumo and, as well?
So if I was to add Brentford to this is where I think there was a comment as well made by Matthew. In terms of getting Diaby from like game week 8 onwards, because you see Mbumo after Forest, it's a slightly tough, like you got tough, easy kind of run for Brentford. So maybe that is the kind of switch
that is happens. The strategy. Yeah, absolutely. And I think like, maybe even so, I think we were saying that, was it Spurs, like it might be that you jump off of Maddison, right? Like and bring in a Diaby a little bit early, like for the Brighton fixture, maybe, because it's at home.
Jump off of Sterling, you mean?
Jump off of Sterling. Sorry. Jump off of Sterling. But actually, who have we got at the bottom there? Underneath Newcastle.
Spurs.
Yeah. So Spurs are playing in game week 7. They're playing Liverpool.
Yes. Oh no. So this is where. So if you go Sterling at the start, then you jump off to either Maddison or Diaby.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
So I guess that's where. So that's possibly a situation where you could also not only Sterling but also Jackson to a Watkins could potentially be a case there as well.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. But see, at that point, are you bringing in 3 forwards? Because, if you think about like Wilson and Isak as well, there's an opportunity there, And so this is where like I've been toying with the idea of jumping off of Haaland. Is that even an option? I don't know. No.
It's too scary. Unfortunately.
It's too scary.
Because he still gets a lot of chances, even though he's not scoring highly at the moment.
I know.
He gets a lot. And when Foden is on the pitch, he's getting
giant.
Even more.
Yeah, exactly. So, exactly.
Probably not for the moment.
No. Yeah. I'm just gonna write that down on my post-it note.
Unless he gets injured, then I don't see myself at least removing him for the moment. Captaincy could be a different story, where there may be weeks
definitely different.
That you could probably look to go against him. And it's kind of worked for a few people so far. But yeah, that's in terms of removing. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see.
I think we've got to get to at least halfway through the season before risks like that. But yeah, look, you're right. There is definitely potential there to sort of jump between some of the players that we've just talked about. But I really do feel that at this point, by sort of game week 7, 8, around that sort of mark, we're probably going to see the template shifting a little bit more to that 3-4-3. Because there are some really good options there now.
Yeah, exactly. The forwards do, at least there'll be more
Yeah,
forwards with good fixtures that pop up at that time.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I
So
like it.
okay, so from Aston Villa point of view, Diaby and probably a Watkins are the
Yeah,
main.
yeah. I mean, I don't know, like with Dinia, is it Dean or
Look at Dean.
Dinia?
Yeah, Dean.
Luka
Yeah, Dean.
Dean,
Yeah.
yeah, and Cash, also sort of like I know like there's a bit of rotation there and all of that as well, but just kind of I was looking at sort of set piece takers as well, and I noticed like Douglas Luiz took a pen, and he's across a lot of set pieces as well. So yeah, interesting, how that is going to continue moving
Mm,
forward as well. So I think Douglas Luiz was across a lot more from a set pieces point of view. Lucadine, yeah,
mm,
again, is taking some of those set pieces as well. So yeah, I'm not sure, like does that sort of sway you a little bit towards because Diaby's not sort of, in that
yeah, that's
in
what
the
in
set piece
terms of
sort
set
of
pieces.
option.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but then I guess the question is like in terms of who, like you get to compare with different midfielders as well, and the
Yeah.
output of the other midfielders as well in terms of that. Like the likes of
Yeah.
Madison has set pieces. The
Yeah,
likes
exactly.
of Sterling probably doesn't have set pieces. Sterling is on the end of
Mm.
most of the stuff. Um,
But if we're
the
looking for a fifth
yeah,
midfielder that is cheap,
yeah. Oh, he fits the
right?
bill. DRB
He
probably.
fits the
Yeah,
he fits the bill, like similar to Enzo.
yeah.
He's just getting across. But yeah, I think from a returns point of view, would you want to, like, given that everyone's got so much money in the bank, we're probably going to see more of those midfield spots on the bench that are costing us, 8
Hmm.
mil because there's
Probably.
so much money to go around.
Yeah, yeah. For those who have Watkins though, I still probably will keep him. The
Mm.
fixtures are still good, even though
Yeah, I wouldn't jump off.
yeah, because the next one is like you mentioned, or I mentioned Liverpool. We don't know what will happen, to be honest. And you mentioned the inability to keep a clean sheet. Now with Van Dijk also gone on red.
I'm already stressed thinking about it.
So I
I've
would,
just recited myself when
yeah,
it comes to Liverpool keeping clean sheets or not being able to keep clean sheets, right? Every single match I go into it thinking they're going to concede.
yeah,
Like, yeah, it's just definitely going to concede.
yeah. If you're open to that, then I think Aston Villa. If people who have Watkins, be patient. The fixtures will come. The points will come.
The
Might
points will come.
Yeah, might not haul double digits, but you'll still tick over.
Yeah, and I think given that there's not that many cheap, if you think about like the cheap forwards, right? We've tried the João Pedro experiment
Yeah,
and that's not gone very well.
yeah,
So, I definitely sort of jumped off of that very, very quickly. It's like I tested enough and that's enough for me.
yeah.
But there's not that many cheap forwards, right? So I think Alvarez is on the cheaper side. Which is actually a really
Six
good
point
price point
something.
for
Yeah.
him. Yeah, yeah, it's really good actually. But if you think about the rest of them, so we were talking about Isak and Wilson, they're 7 mil,
Mm,
7.5 mil upwards, right? And then you've got Watkins is sitting at 8
8.
mil.
Yeah.
So would you say Watkins ticking over with his 5 points is worth an 8 mil?
Fair enough. I guess that's why we'll have to kind of wait and see.
Yeah.
But then again, the other forwards aren't screaming points as well.
No,
Yeah.
that's what I mean. So if you have, then you keep,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
you don't. But if you have the option of, like transferring in, then maybe a little bit
Then
later
yeah,
to
exactly.
transfer
Then you
in.
hold and
Yeah.
wait. You don't buy immediately. It's like a don't
No.
buy, don't sell kind of situation.
Yeah.
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 Cool. So that's basically all I have. I unfortunately don't have a position one for it because they didn't have it. So that's basically all the teams that we needed to cover. And I
Excellent.
would add just the one you sent me. Any other player that we kind of needed to touch on? I think we kind of covered all of the players that were somewhat mentioned.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. I don't think we touched on Trent, at all. I don't really have that much to add other than, like I think once he starts firing, we're probably going to reconsider our, sort of perspective on Trent, I feel. It's the same with Trippier, I think they're in the same camp there where we can't see it, at the moment, but yeah, I think once they get going it'll be a different story. I included like Sarr because he was just getting in really good positions, like for a 4.5, for Tottenham, he was just getting in really good positions, got a goal, looked okay, but again, there's so many good midfield spots. Again, another player that would probably sort of, keep sort of getting missed. But I don't know. Maybe we'll hit everyone's radars again if he starts sort of, like getting the points.
Yeah. I mean,
performing.
Like you have Rodri at City, so it's kind of
Yeah,
going
I
under
know,
the
right?
radar.
Like that's insane. Yeah, exactly. But I don't know if you caught the I think I saw a quote or something, about obviously having
Rodri.
Kovacic in the team. Yeah, that sort of enabled Rodri to play up, go forward a little bit more, which is interesting. And I think that's the type of conversations I think like this series, but also, more conversations need to be had where, the change in formation and the change of players that we've seen this season, especially. We've seen an influx of players leaving, the Premier League, going to the Saudi League, going to other leagues, etc. But also, just having lots of switch ups as well. So I think we still see the likes of Rodri sort of playing that deeper role and not really getting up. And so, it's going to be interesting. There's going to be a few more players emerging like that as well, I reckon.
Yeah, I think we'll have to wait and see. 5 more days in the window. New players could come and they could change everything up. So we'll kind of wait and see. But yeah, I think kind of covers everything. Yeah.
Basically. Yeah, I reckon so. Anyone else sort of jump to your mind?
From the players that we mentioned, or at least from the teams, not really. I think the one interesting thing I would want to see is whether Son plays that striker role or not.
The 9 role,
Because if he does, that changes a lot in terms of midfield options. It becomes a potential. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I reckon so. Especially because we've got so much money going. He's what, 9 mil, isn't he?
Yeah, 9 mil. So a bit more on the premium side. But
do you know what the funny thing is? I think Sterling was 9 mil last season, wasn't he?
I think so.
Yeah. Isn't that? Yeah, it's just mad. What's happened there. But what are you thinking about your transfers at the moment?
So I've already done an early transfer of Garnacho out for Maddison. I know Spurs have a cup fixture today or later today against Fulham, so hoping nothing happens there.
I really
but I've gone there, and now I'm thinking of a hit in terms of I'm wondering whether I should do Kabore to Gusto, because I have Saliba and Estupinan both, and I'm not sure whether I want to start both or do I start Estupinan against Newcastle. That's something that I'm still wondering.
Yeah, I'd be open to that. I'm currently sort of thinking about the same as well. I was just looking at chat. Rumor about Gibbs White heading over to Spurs. Yeah, that's interesting. Isn't it?
So that's what I think. The one good thing is the deadline, the transfer deadline. I think they are both on the same day. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
So the FPL deadline and transfer deadline. But at least most of the teams will have done their business by then. We don't know.
Well, this is it's so annoying because like we've got our deadlines at 3:30 a.m. again on Saturday, isn't it? I hate that. It's so annoying. Oh my god.
Been bad for my sleep, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think I'm going to be sleeping very well that night. But I'm in the same camp as you at the moment. So I've already made one transfer, and I'm on the cusp of my second transfer. To take a hit. And I'm okay with that actually. Like, a lot of people sort of talk about not taking hits so early, but I'm okay with that at the moment, just because it'll probably be for, Maddison. Although, I had 2 free transfers last game week and I brought in Foden and look what happened there. So you just don't know. And I think like that's the best thing that you can do is just make the right decision based on the information in front of you. Right decision for your team, right?
Yeah, that's what. So I guess that's what we have to see, because the question is also, do I keep Estupinan or do I sell him? That's another thing that I'm wondering. And I'm like, if I keep him, then I can play him for that Gameweek 6 fixture against Bournemouth, where Udogie will have a tougher fixture. So there's a slight rotation there.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to unfortunately play him. Well, fortunately or unfortunately, depends on how you want to look at it.
Yeah.
Like he's obviously getting in insane positions and sort of literally playing up the front like a striker at the moment, so half the time. Although they have been leaky as well,
Yes.
right? Like, Brighton haven't necessarily
No,
been, so strong in the defense like they showed
the
last
bottom
season.
three for defense.
Yeah. Wow. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, they're already feeling the Caicedo not being there, and obviously McAllister not being there, and yeah.
So
Yeah, interesting.
that's the thing, because 12 big chances conceded. So it's a lot.
Yeah, that is a lot.
That's why I'm
That is a
wondering,
lot.
like, at what point do I just want my clean sheet guaranteed and then attacking returns? Because Gusto could also offer the same thing. He could offer the same thing as
Yes.
Stupinan is offering,
Yeah,
with a high chance
Yeah.
of clean sheet guarantees.
I agree. And I think this is where I've sort of gone, actually I want to attack rather than sort of sort out my defense. Like, I've still got Gabriel, right? And so I'm gonna have to play Chilwell, Walker. Oh my God, Walker. Chilwell, Walker, and Estupinian.
Yeah.
I mean, I could play the other options. I play Baldock, and they're playing Everton, so that is an option as well. But I like your transfer though. Going Gusto would be a really good shout.
I have to see whether I have the guts to do it, or if anything else changes during the window. We'll have to see.
Yeah, well, it's Chelsea at home, as well, and it's less about the clean sheet and the attacking. It's more about the attacking.
Yeah,
so,
that's true.
Yeah,
it's the attacking thread that I want to like jump on, because my midfield is packed and I don't have room for Sterling. So then the question is, do I like get the attacking thread? That's the thing. And there's one final comment about Maduake could play right wing back possibly, but I think Gusto was bought in for the James thing, so we'll have to wait and see. But yeah,
I mean, the way Gusto is performing right now, I don't think he's going to get dropped or rotated.
Same. That's what I think he should be fine.
He's got insane stats already. Yeah.
Cool. We'll end it there.
Amazing.
Thank you to everyone who's been watching. If you reached up to this point, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe. And do follow FPL Mez or Mira on Twitter, and we'll have the links in the description as well. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you all tomorrow for our podcast. Until then, see you all.